Welcome to From Our Generation, where we uncover the ideas and events that shape the world we live in today. I'm Crom Carmichael.
And I'm Mike Hassel.
Together we'll explore the past to better understand the present, because history isn't just about what happened, it's about how you think about it. All righty, well, Mike, it is January 30th, 2026, and lots going on. And I thought what we would do is discuss some of the happenings that are going on, and then some of the policy implications that were the implications of the policies that were passed last year, and what they will mean for 2026 and perhaps 2027.
Okay.
So let's begin with on the immigration topic. What's going on in Minnesota? It appeared to me as of yesterday that the officials in Minnesota, that would be the governor, the mayor of Minneapolis, and the attorney general, had agreed to cooperate with ICE to the extent that if they had jailed an illegal immigrant for some crime, picked him up for some crime, that they would cooperate with ICE and let ICE come and pick up that illegal immigrant at the jail.
And they have not been doing that. You're saying this is a new agreement where they're reversing their cooperation?
They've not been doing that. They've not been cooperating at all.
Yes. And now they're going to?
Well, that's what the agreement, as of yesterday, what I thought it meant.
Okay.
But David Fry, the mayor, came out and said something different.
Jacob Fry?
Jacob Fry is he's also now claiming that if a illegal immigrant has received its deportation notice from a judge, that they're not going to cooperate to have that person deported. And what I worry about, and you and I, we talk about these types of things, is in a free society where you have elections that then put people in positions of power to then run the company, run the country, or govern. Let's just call it govern, not rule, but to govern. They're supposed to govern within the rule of law.
Yes.
And everybody until fairly recently, left and right, said the rule of law matters. No one is above the law. And now what you now see is that if you are an illegal immigrant, if you're simply an illegal immigrant, that in the blue states you are very much above the law, in that they do not want to see the law applied to you.
Yes.
And if you are an illegal immigrant who has actually committed crimes or been convicted, not convicted, but indicted for committing crimes, like the Maryland man, the left seemed to rally around that person. I think eventually he will lose and he'll be deported. But the fights that go on to not require illegal immigrants to live under the rule of law. And in 2010, Barack Obama gave a speech, and I thought it was a very eloquent speech. I thought it was a very eloquent speech at the time, but it's been brought up again because no laws on immigration have been passed. No new laws have been passed since that speech. And he says we must adhere to the law, as compassionate as we may want to be. If somebody comes into our country illegally and they do not have a legal right to be here, they must be deported. And he goes through a big, long list of reasons why the rule of law is essential to our way of governing ourselves. And I thought it was extremely eloquent, what he said then. And but now the Democrat Party, almost to a person, seems unwilling to adhere to the very principles that he articulated. I'm interested what you think that means, or if you think it means anything looking longer term.
Well, several things to say. First, the rule of law is one of the chief kingpins, I would say, of Western society. We pride ourselves on that because the alternative is rule by fiat or dictate by a tyrant.
Sure.
Okay? It's not up to somebody to decide what they think is just and then dictate it to everyone else. You have a process for making law, process for executing the law, a different branch of government for making judicial decisions about controversies in the law. So that's long established. I think we get to the point of we say, what do we do when there are laws that we think are unjust? Okay? Now, I think that's kind of what's behind this. People have decided this is unjust because they don't like the result that applying the law creates.
Well, maybe they think it's unjust. That's an argument that they use, but it could be that they have other reasons, not have nothing to do with justice. It may have to do with power.
It could be,
and because the way the census is taken,
yes,
illegal immigrants count when the census is being taken.
So we're reading tea leaves here, trying to see what is really motivating people to do this. One could be simple Trump derangement syndrome. They don't want him to succeed at anything, and whatever he thinks must be wrong.
Yeah, and I'm trying to ask you not so much as to why it's happening, but what you think what is the longer term implications of essentially. I'm not going to say it's half the country because I don't believe that half the country, almost all the Democrat elected officials, seem to be resisting following the law when it comes to illegal immigrants.
Right. And
I'm asking, that's a fairly large statement. It's a broad topic. It's a well understood topic because we've been trying to deal with it for 50 years. And so my question is, if the party that is not following the rule of law continues to not follow the rule of law, what if anything, are your concerns about that longer term?
Well, if we degrade the rule of law, then we have a less civilized society. We settle our differences in non-legal ways.
Or the people who have the local power and maybe then the national power, they then abuse the law. That's my concern is that if you're a party that lost an election and you're not willing to live under the laws that existed at the time that you lost the election or laws that are passed after you've lost the election, if you're not willing to live under a system where that's how our system works, if you're not willing to do that, if you get power again, how will they then see the law?
Well, if you think you're law-abiding, it's hard to keep obeying the law and have a ratchet where it's used to your disfavor when others don't want to follow the law. And then when you're in power, if you don't do the same thing, it's like fighting with one hand tied behind your back. Yeah. It's a ratchet toward the priorities of the unlawful side.
Well, in Minnesota, it's these three officials, the mayor, the attorney general, and the governor, have all said they're now going to cooperate. But one thing they could do, the mayor could tell the police, don't arrest anybody who's an illegal immigrant, don't bring them to jail. So they could then, it's kind of like, fingers crossed, I will turn over to you all of the illegal immigrants as they are released from jail.
Right.
But if you never bring them to jail, have you kept your word?
There's a million subtleties where you break down these into components and, is it enough to be accused of something? You have to be indicted. You have to be convicted. At what point in that spectrum are you subject to deportation, as a criminal alien? There's a million subtleties that we could do, and I guess they do this in law schools. What interests me is looking at parallels in other parts of our culture.
Okay.
One that occurs to me is lawfare. A lot of lawfare was used against Trump between 2020 and 2024, trying to disqualify him from the election.
Right.
And even before that, in the earlier 2016 election, it was tried.
Right.
There were people calling for faithless electors in 2016. In ads in the New York Times, don't vote as you're instructed to do by the voters.
Right. I remember that.
And so I think Trump decided, to hell with that. I'm not going to be following these laws if they're not going to be followed by my opponents. And so he's brought a bunch of lawsuits against Letitia James and all of these folks. They may not be strong legally.
Well, he didn't bring lawsuits. He's had them indicted, or they have been indicted. The Justice Department, and for mortgage fraud and different things.
Yeah. So a lawsuit would be in the civil law. An indictment, I guess, is in the criminal law.
Yeah.
So I will mess up the semantics of these things. Basically, he's taking legal action against these folks, and it's of the same kind that was done against him. It's tit for tat.
Right.
And people wail that, this is not justified. Well, neither were the first ones, but if they can do it, why can't I?
Well, and this gets into, now we're going to circle back to Minnesota on that point on the Alex, how do you pronounce his last name? Pretti?
I'm guessing.
I think it's Pretti. I've heard it pronounced different ways.
Let's use that. I think.
Alex Pretti, he was killed by ICE agents.
This reminds me when I was in third grade, I used to go to the library and I was reading about the scandal, the atomic war scandal, and the Fuchs were accused of treason. You remember the Fuchs? I think they were executed. I did not know how to pronounce their last name.
Okay.
And so we have to be careful. I think Pretti is a dignified one. It's likely Pretti would be.
It's Pretti is how his name is spelled.
And by the way, there was an intentional mispronunciation of Saddam Hussein's name.
Yes.
Bush did that because I think it means boot or bootlicker or something like that.
Yeah,
right?
Saddam has a different meaning.
Yeah, in their language.
In their language.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but
let's use
Alex Pretti, we'll go use that name. He was killed by ICE agents during an altercation with ICE, and there's videos of him previously, not at the time that he
like 10 days
was killed, like 10 days before, where he was spitting on ICE. He was screaming at them, and he kicked the car and broke out the taillights, and he was
as they were trying to drive away.
Yes, he was grabbed. He was grabbed, but I don't think they arrested him.
They did not.
They just grabbed him, and so he shows up again, and there's an altercation, and this time he's armed with a gun, and apparently he had a carry permit. But the fact that you have a carry permit doesn't mean that you are a law enforcement officer, and that you can challenge law enforcement officers. And if somebody were asking me for advice on, I want to go confront ICE, and I'm thinking about carrying my gun, what do you think about that? I'd say, well, I think that's pretty stupid because they might see that as a risk to their lives and shoot you.
Well, he's not authorized to carry out the law. In the 80s, we had a lot of vigilante justice. Remember the Billy Jack movies?
Oh, yeah.
And that guy was lionized, a fictional character,
yes.
but he and Harry, Dirty Harry movies were a similar kind of thing. This was a guy that did some vigilante justice, and people cheered from it because they were tired of being exploited and not protected by the law.
Yes.
But it's unlawful. Vigilante justice is not a lawful way to execute the law. It may be a lawful way to defend yourself.
Yeah, and that's the key is that some people are called vigilantes when they're merely defending themselves.
Yes,
you had that with the subway person, Bernie somebody, and he had a gun.
Yeah,
and
the hoods attacked him. And he shot him.
Yeah, and so they called him a vigilante.
Right.
And the best example to me of a vigilante was the Death Wish. Remember Charles Bronson, where these thugs broke into his house and murdered his wife and daughter, and the police didn't seem to be able to do anything, and so Charles Bronson armed himself up and he investigated himself and he figured out who did this,
right,
and he would kill them one at a time,
right.
And
that's
that
not
was
exactly self-defense.
That is not self-defense. That is vigilante justice.
Right.
And but at any rate, getting back to Pretti, he gets killed, but then the reaction to that is really what I'm interested in, and that is that the media almost the legacy media treated him almost in a saintly way.
Yeah.
They even photoshopped his photo in his nurse's top, making him look bigger and stronger and more handsome.
Yes.
Than he actually was.
Enhanced.
They enhanced it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Dick Durbin goes on the Senate floor with a photoshopped a big picture, claiming that this was the instant before Pretti was killed, and it says you can see he is not holding a weapon; he's holding a camera. But the problem with the photo is it also shows an ICE agent holding him, and the ICE agent does not have a head. And so it is.
So it's clearly altered.
It is clearly
and it's
an
obvious
altered.
to anybody that takes a fair look at this that it's a manipulated image.
Yes, and I just have to say that if Dick Durbin is stupid enough, and I have to use that term, if he is stupid enough to put that picture up there where the ICE agent holding him doesn't have a head, one of the ICE agents holding does not have a head,
Right.
and thinks he can get away with that, the media actually treated it as if it was serious.
You know, one of the things we've said repeatedly on this show is that people will believe what they want to be true.
Yes.
So I want to go back to that. And,
Yes.
and it's true of us. It's true of you and me
Yes.
and everyone. And so when I listen to this, I try to be skeptical and understand what is the balance of the evidence so I can think what is my thinking about this. I'm not in charge of executing the law. I have no pretense of having influence over it. But I'd like to understand whether I'm being fair in the judgments that I make.
Yep.
And I have a really difficult time justifying what's happening from the left. They seem to be so animated by spite and anger and resentment and maybe humiliation because they lost an election. But so many of the things they're doing are just so far beyond a balance of reasonable that I struggle with what's going on here. Are they being paid to do this? I've heard allegations that they are, that there are billionaires that are, paying them to come out and protest.
And government employee unions that supply the money.
Yeah.
To supply the money. The Occupy Wall Street. Many of the people who were occupying Wall Street were being paid a salary to stay there.
Yeah.
They were being paid to do that because Obama needed a reaction to the Tea Party movement, and the Tea Party movement was essentially a bunch of volunteers that said, "I'm not going to take it anymore." I don't remember who that guy was on the floor of the stock exchange or something, who screamed and yelled over something that Obama had done, and it ignited the Tea Party movement. And so then the Occupy Wall Street movement was to show that there were people who cared about the other side, but they were actually paid to do it.
So I'm hesitant to attribute to my opponents that they're just prostitutes for sale. They'll do whatever they're paid to do. I think there's probably some real ideology and belief and passion.
No question about that.
It makes it easier if you're paid.
Yes.
You can leave your job and do it and think you're killing two birds with one stone, right?
Yes.
So I don't know if that's what's going on, but it's a way of thinking about it.
And
But
so
I
think your question is it organized? Because it may be the people in the streets are not being paid, but are there people who are organized who send out these tweets and gather people and
that's
gather
beyond question.
And then they are paid.
Yeah,
they are paid organizers.
Yeah, there are people that put out, we're having a meeting, we're going to train you how to do peaceful protests. And, of course, they call peaceful protests people taking a gun to a confrontation.
Right.
And blowing whistles and putting cars in the way of ICE.
Yes.
And people are inclined to say that's peaceful. It is not. It's obstructive.
Yes, that's right. That's not. And by the way, our Constitution, just so we're clear on this, our Constitution does not ever use the word protest. Mm-hmm. The Constitution says that you have the right to peaceably assemble and redress acts of grievances or things like this.
And to express yourself.
Express yourself. You can do that, but you have the right to peaceably assemble.
Yes.
And obstructing people and putting your cars in front of their cars so they can't move, and if they're trying to arrest somebody, that you get in there and try to stop them from arresting.
Yeah.
Those are things that are obstructing and against the law. But I want to get back to Alex Pretti, and that is that the very people who claim that the law enforcement officials who shot him should be held in account for murder. I would like to ask them, should the police officer who shot Ashley Babbitt on January 6th, she was unarmed.
Yes.
He didn't even warn her because the video of the time has an audio track. And all you see is the gun. You see the gun come out on the left-hand side of the screen, and you see him pull the trigger and shoot her and kill her.
Right.
Now, that's been investigated, and the investigation was closed with no charges being filed. But murder has no statute of limitations. And so if the people who think that law enforcement officials who are doing their job should be held for account for shooting somebody, in Alex Pretti's case, he was armed. Well, if he's armed and is shot, and that person is somehow responsible culpable of murder during a melee, where you think and you claim, I thought my life was in danger. Well, that's what the Capitol Hill policeman said. I thought my life was in danger, and that was accepted,
right?
As a reason. Now, I'm going to say you have a process, but the standards of the process ought to be the same, and this is what we're trying to get to when we talk about the rule of law. Now, people could say, well, that's different. Say, well, It really isn't different.
Well, things are always different in some degree. And the question is whether it's a material difference.
Exactly.
They're the same in some degree. I really like to think about this. Compare and contrast was an assignment in high school. It's basically looking at things that are the same and looking at things that are different. You take any two things and you'll find a list of both.
Sure,
pros and
that's
cons
fair enough. Yeah,
and
that's
all
great.
of that.
Yeah.
And so, to me, the question is who gets to decide. If I think something is unjust, what can I do about it? Now, let's say I don't like capital punishment. I cannot run into the chamber and rip out what they're doing and obstruct the process.
If the capital punishment
if it's a legal process,
is a legal process.
I can't. Yeah, it's not up to me to assert my idea of justice and obstruct the legal process. There's a famous quote from Oliver Wendell Holmes where somebody raised this about an unjust decision of the court, and Holmes said, "Sir, this is not a court of justice; it's a court of law."
Yeah,
and he was
and the law has to be
confronting the point that whether you think the law is just or not, you can do that. David Thoreau did civil disobedience because he didn't like the laws about the War of
the poll tax. It was the poll tax
of the Mexican War, I think it was.
He didn't want to pay the poll tax.
Yeah. And so and Aristotle, I believe it's.
By the way, just to finish the thought on David Thoreau, he went to jail.
Yes.
And then friends of his paid the fine. He was put in jail until he would pay the fine.
Yeah, and he didn't like it.
He refused to pay the fine.
Yeah.
It wasn't a big fine.
Yeah.
He could afford it. It's not like he was rich, but it was a tiny fine.
You're right.
But
he wouldn't pay it.
He would not pay it. And so he was being held in jail. So some friends of his paid the fine, and he was furious
that they paid it.
Because he was trying to make a point.
Yeah.
And I thought and so he was willing to so-called pay the price of his civil disobedience by going to jail for not paying the poll tax.
There's a similar story with Socrates, who was prosecuted for corrupting the youth, and he didn't think he had done any of the sort. But that's what the court said, and he drank the hemlock. He was sentenced to. He said, "This is the law, and I'm going to follow the law."
Yeah.
And so we remember it thousands of years later because it's so unusual to arrange your priorities that way, even in something you think is unjust.
Yes.
So the point is, we had this last year in the Tennessee legislature. Some people didn't like some things that were going on. They took bullhorns in there and just shut down the procedures of the legislature.
Yes.
And they thought they had the right to do that for peaceable assembly, and they thought that was peaceable because
we don't know whether or not they actually thought that. We just know they did it. We just know they did it.
Fair enough. We don't know what they thought.
Yeah.
But I'm supposing the only justification for that is you think you have a right to say what you want, even with a bullhorn in a legislature that shuts it down.
Right. But would those same people think the same way about people lining up at their office, at their legislative office with bullhorns and screaming at them and bullhorns? And the answer is probably not. And so then this is why I say that if we get to the point where we're going to let some people live under the law in a certain way and some people live under the law in a very different way, which brings me back to another question that is in this same time frame, and that is that both President Clinton and Hillary Clinton have refused to honor the subpoenas to appear before the House of Representatives to answer questions about their relationship with Jeffrey Epstein.
Right.
And because there's lots of evidence now that the House has gotten from the Epstein files, where they are in those files a lot.
Right.
And so Congress wants to question them. Well, in a few years ago, the Democrats controlled the House, and they wanted to question Steve Bannon and Peter Vaccaro.
Okay.
And they said we're not going to testify because of executive privilege.
They were in the executive branch at the time.
Well, Bannon wasn't in the executive branch, but he says I was advising, I was offering advice to President Trump.
And that's confidential.
And that's confidential.
Okay.
And so then they held him in contempt, both of them, and they referred them to the Justice Department. And then Trump released them from the executive order. And I know in Bannon's case, he said, okay, Trump has now released me from the executive order or executive privilege. Executive privilege,
okay.
And I will now testify. And they said, nope, you missed your chance. And he was indicted, he was prosecuted, and he was sentenced to prison for a few months.
Mm-hmm.
And he was indicted in Washington, D.C., and convicted in Washington, D.C. So my question is, do Bill and Hillary Clinton, do you think President Clinton and Hillary Clinton feel that they will not be successfully prosecuted?
Well, as you so articulately said a few minutes ago, we can't say what they feel or think.
Yep.
But it appears that they think they may get away with this because of the politics of the region. I think another way of looking at it is whatever comes of it, it may be worse than refusing the subpoena. That they don't have good outcomes otherwise because the things that they can say truthfully and legally under oath may not be favorable to them. Now, I would say this, too. The reason for not releasing all the Epstein files is all this innuendo that comes by guilt by association. You get a picture of them together. You know, that doesn't mean he did anything criminal. You know?
That's right.
Yeah. And so, but people leap to that conclusion. They've been very eager to leap to it with Trump. You have a picture of them together, and so, you know, Trump must have been diddling with his girls. Well, Trump threw him out, I think, long before.
Oh, back
5 years before.
Over 20 years ago,
because of the way he was treating some people at Mar-a-Lago or something like that. But there is no premise, there's no predicate to say he had abused women. It's just like there is now with Clinton. As much of a cad as we may think he is, and as likely as he may have indulged in that little adventure, there's no proof and no evidence, and we can't say that.
No, wait. There's no proof.
I have no proof.
No. Well, okay, we have no proof. But what I'm saying is the Epstein files have produced a lot of evidence.
Right.
That needs to be that now since Congress is supposed to investigate the Epstein matter.
Yeah.
They want to question. They say, "Here's these pictures.
What's going on?
What was going on here?"
Yeah.
So there's evidence, but not proof.
Yes.
That
evidence of what?
And that's what we don't know.
Yeah. So,
there's evidence. There's evidence of something,
right.
And whether or not that something is prosecutable or not is not known.
There's a lot of gray area in here because people use this to persecute their opponents. I'm sure the guys on the left think that's what's going on. But again, back to Trump, this was done over and over and over to him. And I think he said, to hell with it. If that's the way we work, I'm doing it to the other guys.
Well, and this is not Trump. This is the House controlled by the Republicans.
Yeah,
fair enough.
Yeah,
I mean, but it was the House controlled by the Democrats who did certain things and who subpoenaed certain people. Yeah. And now the Republicans are subpoenaing certain people. And so it's going to be interesting to see because they have been referred. The House has now voted, including 9 Democrats, voted on that committee to refer it to the House to the full House to then vote on whether or not to refer President Clinton and Hillary Clinton to the Justice Department. My personal feeling is that they don't think that they will be indicted and successfully prosecuted
as a political matter
in Washington, not politically.
Well, if the House votes, it's a political matter.
If they refer it to the Justice Department,
right,
and the Justice Department indicts, the trial would be in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
I believe that the Clintons, my personal belief is that the Clintons don't think that process would end up with them being convicted. Then the question is, if another person, say the Democrats win the House in the midterm, and they want to have people from the Epstein file or whatever who are not now in government. They're not now in government. They're just private citizens, and they want to subpoena them. Can they say, well, I'm not, I want to be held to the same standard as President Clinton was, and so I will defer as President Clinton. I will not be testifying.
This is a cloud of nuance and subtlety that exhausts me trying to keep up with.
But here's the problem with it, Mike, and that is that if in the future, if what I'm saying happens, if they're referred to the Justice Department and the trial in Washington results in a not guilty, okay, and so they're not sent to prison.
Right.
Does that mean that anybody in the future can just choose to not testify if they're not part of government, if they're a private citizen? Can they choose not to honor a subpoena? And if the answer is no, they have to honor it, but the Clintons didn't, then you get into this very, very sketchy area that leads to all kinds of social and civil unrest in a society.
It's one of the reasons I'm a limited government conservative, because the more laws you have, the more complicated messes you have like this, because people don't know what the law is. Mm-hmm. What am I supposed to do? It seems fairly clear I'm supposed to show up if a subpoena is issued, but maybe not. So this raises those kinds of questions, and it undermines the rule of law.
Yes, well, it undermines the rule of law if some people are who refuse to testify because they've been given a subpoena are convicted, and other people who've been given a subpoena to testify before the same chamber are not convicted. That's where the problem comes. That is truly two completely different standards of justice, and that's what worries me about that. But let's move on to another instance that I kind of saw, and that is that you have this DA in Philadelphia, and we're going to call him a Soros-financed DA in terms of his campaign because
is that because he is? Because
George Soros finances a lot of his. He has organizations that finance a lot of candidates for the position of district attorneys, who then win, and then the way they view the use of their powers is very controversial. Let's just put it that way.
A couple years ago, it was defund the police.
Yes,
that seems to have run its course, and now it's defund ICE.
Well, except DAs can't do that, but DAs do have authority as district attorneys to do certain things where they can apply the law in one way against some people and apply that same law in a completely opposite way against other people. Right. They have the authority to do that. They shouldn't be doing it, but they have the authority to do it. So in this case, this particular fellow, he is the district attorney in Philadelphia.
Fanning?
No, Krasner. Krasner is the district attorney in Philadelphia. And he gets on a Zoom call or some kind of a social media call with a number of other Soros-backed DAs, and he claims that if ICE, he says that he took an oath to uphold the Constitution, and that if ICE agents come into Philadelphia and do things that he believes
are unconstitutional,
are breaking the laws of Philadelphia.
Okay.
That he will use his position to indict them. Well, federal law is superior to state and local law, and under federal law, if you are an ICE agent or a FBI, any kind of law enforcement agent, and you are acting as an agent and you do something, the federal government is the first to investigate, not the local level. And that's why the policeman in Minnesota with George Floyd, that was a local policeman. And so he was subject to the jurisdiction of the local authorities. An ICE agent,
the guy who
put his knee on George Floyd's neck, and George Floyd died.
Right.
And they claim that he murdered him. Other people say that he was on fentanyl and he would have died anyway. I don't know the answer to that. I just know he had his knee on his neck. He shouldn't have had his knee on his neck, and he was convicted. But the point is, he was a local policeman, and so he is under the jurisdiction of the local authorities. A federal agent is not under the jurisdiction of the local authorities if the federal agent is acting in his capacity as a federal agent. So if an ICE agent is in the process of trying to arrest an illegal immigrant and a melee ensues and somebody gets hurt or killed as a result of that, that ICE agent's the jurisdiction is the federal government, not Krasner. So what's interesting to me is that Krasner on the call says, I took an oath to uphold the Constitution. Well, that's all the Constitution, including the Supremacy Clause.
Yeah.
So he says, but if they do something that is against the law in my jurisdiction, I am going to arrest and indict that person. Well, he doesn't have the authority to do that if the ICE agent is acting in his capacity. So these are just these little nuances, Mike. And, for some people it may be really boring, but as I study history, the countries that begin to fray and fall apart, they fray and fall apart primarily because there become two different levels of justice. And if you are associated and connected to the people in power, then the way justice is applied to you is different than if you are not. I'm not saying you're in the opposition, but you're not if you're not well connected. And that's what I worry about here. And as you pointed out earlier, what Trump did as president, what he's doing now is he's saying, all right, if that's how the law is going to be applied, then I'm going to apply the law the same way. And I could make an argument that that's not wise. I could also make an argument that it is wise because of the equal treatment under the law. That's, for me, that is the fundamental basis of a civil society, is that if we're going to have laws, everybody has to live under them. And if we don't like our laws, then we need to go through the process of changing the laws.
There's a similar thing with agreements, like international agreements. We have an agreement with an adversary and they keep violating it. Why do we have to keep – we said we would do it, but, the other side is not.
Yeah, or it could be our allies. It could be our allies.
It could be anybody, whoever's on the other side of the agreement.
Right.
And so how can you exit? Can you, as a state, exit from the United States? I think the law says no, right? But if you get to the point where you think, I don't want to be part of this federal government, I want to secede, and there are some places that are talking about that. There's a province of Canada that is receptive to the idea of seceding from Canada and be part of the United States. Parts of Washington that want to now be part of Idaho out east because they don't want to. They don't like the politics of the Washington establishment on the coast.
Right.
And of course, we have a famous example of secession that led to a huge war in South Carolina.
Sure.
So, the point is the consent of the governed. Right?
Yes.
And so,
and the consent of the governed, and another time we could talk about what led up to the Civil War, because obviously the very principles that we're talking about now were not applied, and that's what led to that.
Do you think this applies to Minnesota, where you have people that do not consent to the ICE, to the federal immigration law being applied in their state?
I think it's a concern.
Is it a form of secession to say we won't tolerate this?
Well, apparently, a state and local officials do have the right to not cooperate. They do not have the right to obstruct.
To interfere. Yes.
But they do have the right to not cooperate.
Well said. Yeah.
And as Tom Holman says, if you don't cooperate, then the only way that we can arrest these criminal illegal immigrants, and a criminal illegal immigrant is anyone who has entered the country illegally, and then on top of that, anyone who's the greater criminal illegal immigrants have actually committed crimes that would be crimes in this country. Yeah. Say we're trying to get the worst of the worst first. But if you're not going to cooperate, the only place we can go get those people is in their neighborhoods. Right. And that is inherently dangerous to a lot of people. And so if you'll cooperate with us.
Just pick them up when you let them out of your jail.
Yes. If you'll notify us that you have arrested them and that they are illegal immigrants who should not be here. And I think the way it reads right now, the agreement that I saw was that if they're an illegal immigrant who has received their deportation notice, then Holman wants those people to deport them because they've had their hearing,
right,
and now they're going to be deported. Or if you are an illegal immigrant and you've been arrested for violating the law and you've been taken to jail as opposed to prison. Jail is where you're taken if they arrest you. Prison is where they take you if you've been proven guilty.
Okay.
And so there are far more people who go through the jails
Right.
than who go through prisons.
Right.
Because in prison you're there a longer time. In jail it's in and out. But if you're arrested and you're found to be an illegal immigrant, Holman wants to be able to take those people at the jail where it's safe, and go through then the process of deporting them from there. Minnesota apparently still seems to be wanting to resist. They sounded to me like yesterday they were agreeing. Now I'm not so sure. We'll know over the next week or two whether or not they're going to comply. Now this is all going on at the same time as the FBI is now investigating all this fraud in that we know was happening in the Medicaid system, and all these different programs that are designed to help senior citizens or designed to help children in low-income families, and all these different entities that have been formed that don't do anything except bill the government and collect money for services that they did not render. And then the question is whether or not the officials, the public officials in Minnesota, knew that was going on. So that's all going on at the same time. But I wanted to switch gears here just a little bit and spend maybe 10 minutes just very quickly on some other things that are going to be rolling out in 2026. It looks like the Trump accounts are going to take effect where every baby that's born is going to have a $1,000 account in their name, and that the parents will
funded by the government.
But other organizations like Michael Dell he's going to contribute like $1 billion
to supplement what the
government is. Jamie Dimon announced that Chase is going to, and so I think there are other organizations that are now. Trump gave a whole list of them that are going to be doing that, and so this is going to be money that will go into these babies to become children, their accounts, and the parents are the ones who then pick how that money is invested. Now, this is the part that is very interesting to me, because let's say that you're a parent and you have no of your own money invested, and the Trump accounts say you can invest in any one of the following. You can invest in a fund that tracks the Dow Jones average, the NASDAQ, the S&P 500, or the Russell 2000. Let's just say that those are the only four choices you're given. How do you think the average person who doesn't have any savings thinks about those choices?
Well, that's a hard question, because I think you're asking about financial illiteracy.
Yes.
And I'm not financially illiterate, so I'm not a great person to say how would an illiterate think about it. Probably the safest thing, they regarded as the safest thing.
Wouldn't the first thing they say is, well, what are those four things?
Well, okay.
What I'm saying is there's an opportunity here to help educate the public.
That's part of the purpose of doing it.
I hope so.
They have a stake in the system of investing to the future.
Yeah, I hope so. In the state of Tennessee, our state government under Governor Haslam switched our state employees from a defined benefit to a defined contribution. So every one of our state employees in Tennessee gets a certain amount of money every year from the state, which goes into their retirement account,
right,
like a 401k.
Yes.
And they then have to select how that money is invested. And their selection will determine the amount of money they have to retire on when they reach retirement age or decide to retire.
Yes.
That's the same thing here. And I think the opportunity to help people understand how the economy works and how to evaluate these choices given different points in time. Because if you make the choice, let's say that you make the choice to track the Dow Jones average. A year from now, you can go in and change and say, I want to track the Russell 2000. Right. Well, why would I do that? In other words, I can give you reasons why I would do it, and you could give me reasons why you would do what you'd want to do, mm-hmm. and you would think you're doing it because of the knowledge that you have.
Yeah.
But if somebody asks me to perform heart surgery, I like to think of myself as a relatively intelligent person. Asking me to perform heart surgery would be a huge mistake because I don't have a clue.
Well, I'll change my plans.
Yeah, I don't have a clue how to do that. And so that's the same thing here is that you talked about illiteracy doesn't mean stupid. It's lack of knowledge.
Sure.
And this is a great opportunity, I think, And I'm going to couple this with Trump's call to expand HSAs, because young, healthy people, if they have HSAs and not insurance plans that have huge premiums, but now they have HSAs and insurance plans for catastrophic only. If they don't have a catastrophic event at the end of the year, that HSA is going to be their money.
Yeah.
And it will grow over time. And then they need to be able to, once it reaches a certain dollar amount, they ought to be able to invest the other portion in some kind of a retirement plan.
So, George Bush, 43, the younger president, tried to do this with Social Security. And I think he called it the ownership economy.
Right.
And the whole idea was to shift the allocation of resources toward the private sector and away from the government sector. Mm-hmm. It did not work. The politics of the time were able to overcome his initiative.
But what was he trying to do? I mean, I remember what you're saying, but he tried to reform Social Security.
Yes.
And that scared a lot of people.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And the Democrats claimed that he was trying to take away Social Security. That's what they claimed.
Yeah.
Opening up a Trump account is something brand new.
That's right.
So it's not taking away Social Security.
That's right.
And so you can't say, well, Trump's trying to take away Social Security.
Right.
No, he's not. He's opening up an investment account for babies.
Right.
And so this is a fascinating thing, Michael. Politically, what George W. Bush tried to do, you and I may think that was a wise thing for him to do. We may think that. Right. But politically, the way it was handled was ineffective.
It allowed it to be portrayed as taking something away.
Yes, and what Trump is doing is he's doing something to add.
Yeah,
and I think that's a politically insightful. That is really an interesting insight because I'm glad you brought that thing up, because I do remember now. Bush tried to say that a portion, and it was only a portion and he even tried to argue. He even tried to say that if it doesn't work out, you'll still get this. I mean, you'll still get what you would have gotten, but this is better.
Right.
But it was
derailed.
It got all derailed.
Right.
And so the Trump accounts and the HSAs, I think, are a great opportunity. And then the other thing
before we go to the other thing, we've had several podcasts about the danger of the debt, of the government debt.
Yes.
This is the problem with having an added program. Okay, because it's going to be more money paid by the government in addition to what they're already spending. Instead of reallocating and restructuring the way this enormous spending in Social Security is doing, it's going to continue to be undisciplined and financially, shall we say, less than optimal.
Yes, you could argue that, but I'm going to push back on it.
Okay.
In this way, is that the taxpayer money that goes into the account is not managed by the government.
Yes.
It's managed by the private sector, by the parents.
By the owner.
The additional money that is put in those accounts by corporations or wealthy people who want to contribute to the Trump accounts, and they can contribute, they can craft that however they want to.
That doesn't affect the deficit.
That doesn't affect the deficit.
Yeah.
And the first one doesn't increase the cost of administration. Because it's administered separately,
not by the government.
Not by the government, and so it also is an opportunity to provide education, so that people will want an education, will want information.
They'll need it to manage their money.
Yeah, they will want it, so I like the idea. I like the idea of expanded HSAs, especially for younger people, because younger people are already bearing Social Security and Medicare costs.
Right,
that's being taken out of their paycheck. If healthier people, and most younger people are healthy, 90% are healthy, they would be able to see their HSAs grow in value, and grow into their retirement accounts, which I think is a very, very good thing. Plus, it's also managed separate. That savings is managed separately than the government managing the money, because you remember this when Al Gore ran for president. He talked about the Social Security lockbox, that everybody has their own lockbox. The way he said lockbox was kind of humorous. Lockbox.
Yeah.
Some strange way of saying it. Nobody has a lockbox. But he was trying to make it out as if everybody had a Social Security account that was money in a little lockbox. And it's not.
Right.
But this is. A Trump account is your money in your account. An HSA is your money in your account. So I want to go to the last thing before we wrap up. and that is that in the big beautiful bill, and I only call it that because that's the name of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're permitted.
That's thank you.
I give you.
Is that I did not know this until about 2 or 3 weeks ago. There's a provision in there that organizations, and this is effective in 2027.
Okay.
So school year 2027.
School year, you mean calendar year?
Well, it's for the calendar year, but it's for the school year beginning in September of 2027. So you can give the money anytime in 2027.
All right.
And it's for that school year.
All right.
So for the tax year 2027, school year 2027.
Starting in the fall.
Yes.
So you can get money in January that will
money in
be
January,
distributed in September for students going to school. Tell us about the details.
Exactly. And what it allows a person to do is, first of all, somebody in the state of Tennessee, and I'm not sure who, but somebody they can set up a scholarship under federal regulations, but the federal government doesn't regulate it, but it has to be approved, like an SEC form. It has to be approved.
Right.
That you set up a scholarship organization, then individuals can give up to $1,700 to that scholarship organization, and then take that $1,700 as a tax credit, which is dollar for dollar against their federal taxes. And then that scholarship entity can then give money to scholarship for children who live in households with 300% of the poverty level or lower. And so that's another way to boost opportunity of choice for lower kids, to the extent that Tennesseans know about this, because it doesn't cost if a Tennessean is paying $1,700 in federal taxes, this costs them no money.
Right.
It's a tax credit,
right.
And that's true in every state.
So tax credit means you do all your calculations. I owe $10,000 in taxes, then my taxes become $8,300.
Exactly.
It's not my income is reduced by $1,700, and then I save 20 or 30% of that.
Right. It's the whole thing. Dollar for dollar. Okay. And so if 100,000 people in Tennessee become aware of this, because it costs them nothing, then that's $170 million.
Right.
That can then be used for scholarships for low income kids. And I think that's a wonderful idea, because I think the single thing that is needed to have a society that where you have the greatest level of prosperity for the largest number of people possible, it still requires people have a certain basic level of knowledge. And if somebody says, what's the best way to get rich other than being a performer of some kind? Okay. A performer can make a professional athlete.
Like Beyonce. If you're not Beyonce, how do you get rich?
Or a professional athlete. Yeah. In other words, anybody who is performing can make millions of dollars. If you can't do that, the way to make money is have other people work for you. You say, you may not have to own my own business? No, you just have to invest in other people's businesses. They're working for you. You are then a shareholder.
Exactly.
They are working for your benefit.
Thomas Jefferson had a great quote that, money is a great slave and terrible master.
There you go. That's a good one.
It's unfortunate.
Say that one again, please.
Money is a great slave and a terrible master.
Okay.
Now, it has unfortunate resonance with the practices of his day.
Yeah.
But the point is, if the money works for you, it should be returning. There's even biblical things about returning.
All kinds of stuff.
Return on investment instead of hiding your money in a mattress.
Yes.
You put it to work, and it becomes worth more, and that's godly.
Yeah.
I think according to that.
Well, if somebody invested in Microsoft back in 1985 when it came public and never sold it, they would have, I think, like 20,000 times as much, or 20,000%. I mean, a huge increase.
Well,
Same thing in Amazon. There are all kinds of stocks.
In our lifetime, there's Google, there's Amazon, there's NVIDIA a number of times.
And you can invest in indexes that capture that.
Yeah.
So that's why I say that part of this whole thing is helping people understand, what is the NASDAQ? What is that index? What's in there?
Right.
What's in the S&P 500? It's 500 companies, but what determines if you're in there? There's another fund called Nobel. Its symbol is NOBL. In order to be in it, you have to be a company that's increased its dividend every year for at least 25 years. You can't be in that fund. Now, does it rise like a rocket ship? No. Does it rise steadily over year over year over year? Not necessarily every single year, but over any 5-year period, it's better than it was before, and you're getting dividends. You're getting the dividend in it. So there's all kinds of different ways of thinking about investing where you get some diversification.
Yes. And let me make this point. If you look back at our lifetimes, the big companies that have made these enormous sources of wealth for lots of people, thousands of millionaires have been made from this, employees and also just people who invested wisely in it.
Right.
What they did was, the innovation was to computerize the economy, to separate software from hardware. That's what, and standardize around the Microsoft software. That's what they did. Amazon is a combination of the internet and logistical excellence in warehouses and getting things to you quickly. Since they deregulated trucking, and they've taken advantage of that in the internet. And so Google basically indexed the internet. You can find anything in an instant. I mean, that's an enormous
And
value.
AI is now disrupting Google as we know it, so Google has its own AI.
Well, this is where I'm going, is that we think that that's all over. The wealth that's been made in those. For a long time, the best investment was to reinvest in Microsoft. It may be still today. I don't know. But the human genome has been mapped, and we have AI going. And those things are likely to be larger than the internet alone.
Yes, and have many implications beyond just AI as we think about it.
So there's enormous wealth still to be made by people using these accounts to participate in it.
And what I want to do on our podcast is I want to talk about these things. In future podcasts, I want to say, what is the NASDAQ? What is the S&P 500? In other words, I want us to provide kind of an educational program for people who are interested in thinking about different places to invest, to understand what is an ETF, what does that term mean, and there are lots of ETFs, and that's an exchange fund. So that's what that's but within an ETF it might cover the energy sector. Right. Might be an ETF that invests only in energy.
I think we should spend a whole episode on this, but why don't we take 3 minutes to just run down? I think most of our listeners will be somewhat educated on this.
But they could pass it on to their kids who are not.
Yeah.
And so
Let me try running this down quickly, and you tell me where
Okay.
The Dow Jones is over 100 years old. It's an industrial index created by the Wall Street Journal organization. It's now quite old, and it looks very established.
That's not true.
Let me finish and see.
Yeah.
It looks to more established industrial companies. They replace them, as time goes on. Ones fall off and they have new companies. But the NASDAQ originated.
Let's do one at a time.
I'm trying to contrast them, but go ahead.
The Dow Jones 30 is the Dow Jones. There's a group of people. I don't know who they are, but they select what 30 stocks are going to make up the Dow Jones average.
Yes.
It used to be that General Motors was one of the bellwethers in there.
Right.
Years ago, General Motors was removed, and another company that has nothing to do with industrial was added. I don't know what it was, but the people who look at that, these are big, mature companies, but they're not necessarily industrial anymore. That's the only point I'm trying to make, is that the people who determine the stocks that are in that index, they don't have an interest in selecting a stock that they think is going to go down in value over the next 10 years. They will jettison that stock for you. They will get rid of that stock and replace it with another that they think is better.
Well, it's intended to be like Nielsen is for media, a representative measure of the health of the stock market.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, and they may have strayed from industrial. Still in the name.
Big stocks.
It's still in the name, the Dow Jones Industrial Average,
I know it is.
DJIA. So you're saying it's not strictly industrial.
Not anymore.
But it's not especially high tech.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's true,
This
too.
is the contrast I wanted to build. The NASDAQ is independent dealers, National Association of Securities Dealers and something.
Yeah.
They were operating electronically apart from the trading floor in New York, which we call Wall Street.
They set their own exchange.
Yes. Which is electronic.
Yes.
And so it has tended to attract more innovative companies, and the Microsofts, Googles of the world typically are on the NASDAQ.
Yes.
Typically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or at least they started on the NASDAQ.
So Standard
certainly
&
started
Poor's
there.
is somebody else that had a different way of doing what the Dow Jones was doing.
And they have 500 stocks, so you're going to get diversification.
Yeah, more
and
than
they're
30
trying,
or 50
and
or
they're
100.
trying to get rid of the lousy stocks, not necessarily replace them with the very best, but they have a way of thinking about it. So the S&P 500, and people can go and just look at and ask for a chart of the Dow Jones average for the last 100 years.
Right.
And that's a good thing to do because you see that it has gone up dramatically over 100 years, but within that 100 years there have been some significant dips.
Yeah.
So then it becomes a function of your age as to when you may want to change your portfolio. But
That's right.
But the NASDAQ has gone up at a much faster rate than the Dow, which is what your point was.
That's right.
The S&P has gone up faster than the Dow, but not as fast as the NASDAQ. The Russell 2000 is 2,000 smaller cap stocks. By definition, they have to be smaller cap stocks.
Meaning they don't have as much
Value.
capitalization.
They don't have
Their
much value.
Total value of all the stock that's owned in that company is not so big.
That's correct. Of the equity value of that company is not all that big.
Right.
And so during times of high growth, the Russell 2000 might perform extremely well.
Okay. So then decades ago, you had mutual funds come along where they would pick a selection based on your priorities. It might be to grow, it might be to get dividends, it might be conserve stock.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bunch of strategies. And following that strategy, they would pick the stocks to do that for you. Now they have, age-related funds where if you think I'm going to retire at 70, you can get a fund that's managed toward a horizon when you turn 70.
Right.
So there's all kinds of funds out there that basically diversify for you, so you're not in the business of picking one stock or the other.
Right. But the Trump accounts are going to be given a limited list.
Yes,
and
funds.
you have to pick from that list. What I want us to do, Michael, is get that list.
Okay.
And then have a podcast that includes that and how to think about that.
Yeah.
I think that would be.
So all of those are diversified. Any fund is diversified across a variety of different investments.
By
that's
nature.
Intended to protect you from a failure in one or the other.
That's correct.
You can't lose everything because you picked the wrong guy.
Yeah, yeah.
And then an exchange-traded fund now is they've made an exchange, like a stock exchange, where you can trade this fund and that fund, and you can mix funds, and it's like a second derivative. You have one level of
you're using terms that a lot of
they may not know, but now you even get more diversification because of the way you trade.
Well, and different levels of risk. But the point is that the Trump, the selection that the Trump the parents will have, I would be astounded if it's more than 12.
Yeah.
And there's hundreds of choices available. They're going to pick relatively conservative choices that you have to make within those choices.
Right.
And but what I'd like us to do is really talk about that, and then when maybe we pull up the Dow Jones average over a 120-year period, going back to 1910, for example, and we can show the dips, and how those dips and what happened at that time, because I think it's important. It's important that people recognize that the stock market has an inherent tendency to go up over time, but not all the time.
Right.
And when it goes down, there's usually a reason that it went down. And if it goes down and stays down, there's a reason that it stayed down. And I think until that policy or whatever it is changed.
It's generally due to some policy that has suppressed economic growth.
I want us to kind of tie that in.
And so I think the underlying theme of all this is, how is wealth created?
Yes.
There's a bunch of different ways to do it. You can do none of that and buy real estate. That's got its pros and cons, right? A lot of people participate.
I'm not
in
sure
buying
in
their
a Trump
house.
account. I don't know that that'll be
I'm just saying, a lot of wealth is produced in real
Absolutely.
estate. That's not the way they're doing it that way. But I think the theme is, how are the different ways you can produce wealth?
Right. Yeah. Well, Michael, we wandered around a little bit today on Minnesota and all these. The rule of law was kind of the general theme of the day and what that means. And I don't think that's going to solve itself. Certainly not in.
There's always a lot of ferment about that.
Yes.
As Adam Smith said, I think it's Adam Smith, there's a lot of ruin in a nation.
Yes.
So there's always this, there were double standards in the early American time. There was double standards clearly before the Civil War.
Yes.
It took the Civil War to try to resolve.
And there have been double standards since then.
There will always be, because we're not all the same.
We're not all the same, and we're all human, and we all have our human natures, and human nature has a lot of good, a lot of bad.
Some people are very articulate that there ought to be a double standard. You treat a poor person differently than you treat a rich person in some circumstances, but in others, it's really illegitimate to do.
Yeah,
because their moral standing is not that different.
Yeah.
So, we can elaborate.
And our goal here is for as many people to become financially independent as possible.
Sure.
That's a society that is civil. It's fair-minded and a worthy society, I would say.
Well said. I just remember one time I was listening to a radio show by a guy who was really irritated that somebody had something to say about a surgery he was going to have. And I called in, and I've forgotten the guy's name here in Nashville. And I said, look, as long as I'm paying the bill, I do have something to say about it. But if you spend your own money, it's none of my business, right? But if you want me to pay for it, then you can't exclude me. And that's what happens when you want the government to pay for stuff. Then people say, you're not independent.
Right.
And what we're here, I think, are supporting and advocating is the more independence, the better.
Well, more independence because the less cost there is.
Yes.
And cost is a burden. I mean, we go back to the island. We talked about how when you mentioned government, there is a cost to government that has to be paid somehow. And the bigger the government is, the greater that cost is. It has to be paid somehow.
I would say there's costs in whatever choice you make, but it's up to me to determine how much it is. It's not forced on me.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Yeah. Well, Michael, we will see you, weather permitting, next Friday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Look forward to that.